we will transition into our first session of the day, designing for success, structuring your intranet the right way. We're going to kick off a poll to go with the topic. So if you pop over to the other tab, what is your biggest intranet challenge right now? Let us know. And with that, I bring you Karen and Alicia.
Thanks, Amelia. I'm Karen Downs. I am a strategic advisor here at Staffbase in our strategic communications practice. I have been with Staffbase for a little over a year now. Prior to my time here, I spent an entire career. I'm in my third decade now, running intranet programs, leading intranet programs in large enterprise organizations, mostly in the Midwest. I'm from Kansas City. That's where I live now. And I get involved with our customers on a pretty much daily basis, helping with all kinds of ideas such as governance or content strategy or measurement. How can we really make these things run? So that's the context or the background on me. And Alicia, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
I will. I'm Alicia Dewey. Karen and I go way, way back, so far back that I'm not sure I even want to tell you how far. After Karen and I worked together on a corporate intranet for many years, I left and actually went to work for the UX company who helped us with our intranet redesign. I've been there for about 10 years since. We do all kinds of digital work and user experience, but that includes intranets. Have done intranets for BNSF Railway, KCS, which is now CPKC Railway, AMC Theaters, Compass Minerals. So have not completely gotten out of the business, although we do some other stuff as well. But intranets will always be near and dear to my heart. So hence why I'm here today.
Since you brought up our days together back at Sprint, I thought I would just share a little story and maybe ask you to share a story too, a favorite story from your Sprint days. The story I have to share is just this memory that it took us 2 to 3 years to get funding for a new intranet program all those years ago, and the more things change, the more things stay the same. It seems like I know that's something that has continued to happen to me since then. And when I talk with others, it happens that way as well. The other thing about that, though, is that it might take you 2 or 3 years to get across the finish line for a funding case for a new intranet. But as soon as the funding is made, the check is signed, it's like go time. And all of a sudden that project that you wanted a year to implement, you've been asked to implement in, 60 days, 90 days, some incredibly short time frame. So that was one of my early memories from those Sprint days. What about you, Alicia?
Yeah, one of my earliest intranet/Sprint memories was I went to New York City for an NNG conference, first time I'd ever been there, and decided, and this was very early, I just started working on the intranet, didn't really even have a background in it, decided while I was there, I would visit a retail store in the Flatiron Building in New York City. I think I got the okay from the store manager, and I had no intent other than just to hang out inside a store because I had worked at Sprint Corporate, never been out in the field, never experienced that. Just went in and kind of hung out behind the counter, and it was very interesting. It was my first experience being in the field, and people were sort of like, "Oh, she's from corporate," and I'm like, "Okay, all right, I guess that's true." The reaction I got was very almost suspicious in the beginning, which we're going to talk about getting out among folks and seeing what kind of reaction that you do get. But when they figured out I was there, why I was there, what I was trying to learn, they were 100% on board with it. And it ended up being a huge, huge lesson for me. There wasn't anything I immediately took back and did something with, but it really sold me on the idea of just getting out with your employees whenever and wherever you can, just to experience it. So.
That's such a great segue into what is our first topic, which is knowing your audience. And we're going to go through a few different topics related to setting up your intranet the right way. The first one we'll dive into is really just all about those ways, the things that you can do to carve out time during your day to know your audience, your core audiences. We'll also get into content strategy, not only the content strategy that you're going to need within your intranet, but also stratifying content across the entire digital workplace and differentiating what goes where. And then we also, as Alicia and I were talking and preparing for this, we talked about governance, and like it's never too early to start thinking about your governance, your content lifecycle management, how you're going to keep that content super accurate and relevant and up to date. So just to kick things off with knowing your audience, the first idea that I want to share with you, and this has been, something that comes up, rings true over and over, no matter what intranet project I'm thinking about or working on, is to identify the core audiences. And I'm not talking about every single audience, not every audience that you can reach all the way out to the individual person level. I am just talking about those few groups of people, the audiences that are either strategically or operationally significant to running your business. If you were a healthcare organization, for example, nurses might be an example of a core target audience. Why? Because, nurses are they are essential to delivering the care that is your value proposition for your organization. If you're a healthcare organization, they are expensive to hire, expensive to train, difficult to keep happy, and so on. So they're definitely critical, but there's always a handful, maybe 5, 6, 7 audiences. I think at H&R Block we had 9 core target audiences, and taking time to carve out who those are gives you somebody that you can actually go start talking to and thinking about. Alicia, your thoughts on audiences?
Yeah. I'm gonna. Can you pull up the archetypes document for Compass Minerals? Because Karen and I will talk about different ways that we go about doing this, and I know Karen's favorite way is the cafeteria way. In some ways, just get wherever you like, so wherever you can find people. But when we talk about like know your audience, okay, fine. What does that mean? It can be kind of abstract. So we. At level 5, because we're a user experience company, we almost always start every project out with user archetypes, which are basically a set of characteristics based on goals, barriers. They're sort of like marketing personas, but we don't like give them names and say, oh, Jane's a 35-year-old mother of 2. We don't really do that. We focus a lot more on the goals and the traits and the characteristics. So we've got, different kinds of people, field people, primary audiences, secondary audiences, based on even such things as I'm enthusiastic, I'm up and coming in my career, I want to take all the training I can take. Or usually we have an intranet persona that we affectionately call Grumpy Cat, because he or she is the person that's like, I'm fine, you don't need to mess with things, I know where everything is, leave it alone. And so it's very common for us to go and create these. And the way we typically do it is to go in the field. So we've gone everywhere from movie theaters to a salt extraction mine in central Kansas to talk to some folks at Compass. I've been to railroad facilities. Very confusing to the people in my life who think I'm a writer, and then I have to explain why I'm out at a salt mine or a railroad yard. But the answer is I don't know how to design for, speak to, message to, or create an intranet for people unless I know who they are and what they're doing. So that's kind of what that looks like to me.
That is such a critical point. I think when we think about intranets or lighting up an employee app for the field, there's nothing like just taking time to go out there and spend the day, and be human and talk with people and find out what their day is really like and what are all the reasons or the ways that they're receiving communications. What do they feel like they're missing out on? Until you go and sit down side by side with someone and have a conversation or hang out in the lunchroom, the break room, and just catch people as they walk by. Until you do that, you just don't know.
Yeah. And having worked on external projects as well, Karen and I agree that one of the best things about working on an intranet is you have such ready access to your user base. You have their emails, you have their time. You don't have to go out and recruit. They are there all the time, like a captive audience. And so there are a lot of things about an intranet that are very difficult, but thankfully having access to talk to your audience is not one of them.
Absolutely. You mentioned the lunchroom method. Like, one of the things that Alicia and I talk about all the time is that whereas your friends in the organization who are building websites for external facing property, whereas they have access to lots of tools and resources to get to know those audiences. What we have internally in our organizations is the ability to just go and talk to people. Sometimes I've done that just going into the lunchroom and sitting there and very informally with my laptop and talking with people. Other times it can be more formal, setting up a booth to display the intranet and to answer more specific questions, that kind of thing. Let's jump back into the deck. I want to talk a little bit about a specific method that we use early on in intranet research as we're coming up with information architecture, and that is card sorting. And I share this with you because as communicators, we don't always think that this is something that's for us or something that we can go get involved in. Back in the day, years ago, a couple decades ago, when Alicia and I first started working on this, we would literally pull people into a conference room and sort the content have them sort content into stacks. There would be piles and piles of index cards, and we would ask them to name the index cards, and we'd dump that information into a spreadsheet. It would literally take us weeks or months to get through this card sorting process. And I share that background context because even though it took that much time for us to get through this, we still found so much value in it that we did it. And the value that we got out of that is really understanding from a user perspective how people think about content and how it is the same or different than we think about it as communicators. And that supplied us with the knowledge and the information to help our stakeholders, our business stakeholders across the organization also understand. So now it's not just you saying it, it's not just me saying it, it's, we're looking at the words of employees from across the organization. Today, it's not this hard. It doesn't take it weeks or months. You can literally run a card sort study. You can get through 2 or 3 rounds within a week's time. And you can do that with a tool called Optimal Workshop. This is not earth-shattering, new news or anything like that. Maybe some of you are using it. I'd be interested in the chat if you are, and what experiences you've had with it. But Alicia, do you have any additional context you want to share here?
Well, I have the context that information architecture is absolutely the least favorite part of my job. I can tell you that. Part of it is because it is such it's one of those things that we all have individual feelings about how things should be labeled, how they should be categorized. We all believe that our way is the right way, not because we're all, egotistical, but it's just a very sort of cognitive thing for each of us, and including the people who fund our intranets, the people who are our bosses. And we find ourselves sitting in rooms debating about whether something should be called, pay and time or total rewards. And this type of user experience activity puts an end to that. You've got data, and what people love next to their opinions is data, especially in a corporate environment. So very briefly, if you could throw the other document back up on the screen, I'll show you something that we did actually, the card sort document, sorry, it should be called HR card sort. We actually went to our previous Intranet clients, Children's Hospital here in Kansas City, a couple of the railroads and some others, and we asked them if we could poll their employees about HR and benefits content, because that seems to be relatively common subject matter among large corporations. And we sent this very type of link, optimal sort link, out to folks and had them categorize this type of content, and came up with, like Karen said, instead of manually entering it in a spreadsheet and crunching all the numbers, Optimal will give you these fancy little sort of matrix, and you can see the darker the matrix, the more agreement there was on things. Big epiphany for me is that some things are just simply harder to categorize than others. And once you accept that, it makes it a lot less frustrating. It also does these cool little dendrograms, which kind of show you here at the bottom, like, where people start to diverge in terms of how many people agree where people belong. Karen, we really should be getting like a kickback from Optimal because I recommend them so much.
I know.
But really, they are a good tool. And if you can talk your management into the investment in it, it is totally worth it. And it's entirely web-based, so you don't have to worry about corporate security and a download. Same for your employees. You can send it out by email. It's a web-based link. None of that. So definitely worthwhile in terms of saving you debate time in the conference room. Okay, you can put the slides back up. Thank you.
Absolutely, it is that. So as far as knowing your audiences, I mean, beyond, card sorting, beyond going out in the field and observing people, there's so many other ways to know employees, whether it's pulling people together for a meeting style discussion, or, getting into a tree test to test deeper into your information architecture or to fine tune your information architecture. We've done, task-based testing where you can bring people in, just a few people, 1 or 2 or 3, 4, actually 4 is probably the minimum, I say. We used to do up to 8, but with at least 4, you have enough to ask a few questions, no more than 5 to 8 questions, little tasks, common tasks that would be completed on the intranet. Ask them to complete those tasks and just observe and record the screen so that you've got that data.
Brace yourself though, because it's going to hurt. It's going to be painful. A lot of people struggle with your little intranet baby that you worked so hard to make as good as you can, and you're going to go find your pay stub, and they're going to be staring at it and not seeing it, and it's going to hurt. So just don't say I didn't warn you.
Yeah, and you're like, just use the search. One of the things that we've noticed over time is about half the people are primary searchers, about half the people are primary navigators. And, it's a continuum. Some people at some level, we all use both of those structures to find content and information. But it just, when you ask the questions and observe people going through and using your intranet, it reinforces or helps you understand that it's really important to plan for both. Plan for the person that's primarily coming to look for content through the navigation structures, and also pay attention to search and making sure that content is findable. The last one I would say is probably just basic feedback and feedback loops, making sure that at any time, if somebody's running into challenges, that they have a chance to report that information out to you. Anything else? Did I miss anything, Alicia?
I don't think so. I mean, we could go on and on and on, but we are on the clock here. So if you guys want to see that whole intranet card sort for HR stuff, I'm going to post it on my LinkedIn when we're done. So you can read the whole thing.
Fantastic. Well, let's take a moment to shift gears and start looking at content strategy. What I wanted to focus on here is thinking through content strategy from the perspective of not only the intranet itself, but indeed out across the entire digital workplace. One of the things that people often are challenged with, I think, is understanding or thinking about or leading for the organization, helping all content creators understand there's many places across the digital workplace that content can live. And each of those places has, specific different purposes. And so a tactic that I like to take is to create just a simple rubric. I have a template for one that I've kind of got showing here on the screen, and I'm happy to share that with anybody that asks, if you want to send me a note on LinkedIn. But the idea here is to think about those major content repositories across your digital workplace and what's the best use case for each of those things. From the perspective of how content gets created, who's creating it, who owns the content once it lives there. Does it live with the team? Does it live with the individual? Does it live with the company? What are the tonal differences in how we're talking in these different places? Which places are best for two-way social interaction or collaboration? Are there differences in how request management is going to work in each of these places? Or are there differences in how employees access it? Are there differences in the search experience and how employees have to understand which content lives in each place? And even down to governance, how the different parts of the digital workplace are governed. This, yes, you can get a copy of this document. Just send me a note on LinkedIn. I'm happy to send it to you. It's intended to be a template that you can, put your own words in it, make sure that it fits for your organization. Thoughts on content strategy across the digital workplace, Alicia?
It was very challenging because so much of that tactical information that people were looking for and are looking for are sprinkled out into places like ServiceNow or your document management system. And you don't have control over that a lot of times. So the way you can start at least exerting some measure of control is defining the parameters about, what they are, what they're for, and then doing the best you can from there and maybe trying to help, influence some decisions about where things go. But it is a challenge. I mean, the internet is important. And then there's a billion other internal tools that are also out there working in tandem and trying to collect them all together in some form or fashion and figure out how they're different and how they're the same. It's a huge challenge. So I would say don't let it stop you if you don't feel like you have control. Define it anyway and let someone argue with you and take it from there. You're gonna, that's my big theme overall in terms of intranet management is you have to own it. You have to be the boss. You have to assert your control until somebody tells you not to. So this is a great place to start.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So besides thinking about your content strategy across the digital workplace, I think that another important thing is to start with a content inventory and then do an audit and be ruthless. We have a note on here. What we kept coming back to as we were talking through this is we don't want you to overthink it. This is we want you to make it as straightforward of an activity as you possibly can. I've listed some ideas on the screen of things that you might include in your content inventory. The inventory, you're probably honestly going to start with just a dump from your technology partners of all of the different content that's available. And you may have to append additional information into that initial dump in order to have the information that you really need to assess the content across the digital workplace. That's going to go into the intranet. The other note that I wanted to say about content inventories and content auditing, The inventory part of it is something that once you get that initial dump, it's okay to assign that to, say your summer intern or somebody like that who can really dig in and spend the time and the hours that it takes just to go find the information and append it into your document. When it comes to the audit itself, I don't recommend that you assign that to the summer intern. That is something that you're going to have to make some pretty serious decisions. Some of those decisions are things like which stakeholders need to worry about this, and those are the kinds of things that are decisions that somebody has to make that's going to live with that program longer term. Alicia, I know you have a ton of experience with these. What else do you want to say about that?
Oh, that they're more painful than they ought to be sometimes, to be able to go, hey, go to your IT partners and say, give me give me a spreadsheet of URLs. That is one area where public websites have it all over intranet sometimes, because that information is a lot easier to get. Again, doesn't mean you shouldn't ask for it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't keep bugging people until you get it. Because depending on the size of the repository that you're working with, it could be completely not feasible to try to do it by hand. You're going to some help. And if you absolutely can't get it after you kick up a big fuss, politely, of course, you got to go to hand inventory, do it, do the best you can. But, it starts with just knowing what you've got out there and how to get your arms around it. So don't let it scare you away.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Something that you've taught me over the years, Alicia, is, just give yourself permission to remove stuff, and be fairly ruthless about it. Several years back, I have an example from the H&R Block intranet, and I would say with that program, we were doing a really fantastic job of keeping up with content lifecycle management, keeping content accurate, relevant, up to date, and I was aware of that we had those processes in place. And that indeed employees would respond favorably to questions about, the content is always accurate and relevant and up to date. One area that we struggled with, though, was native file documents and PDFs. Those things tended to get uploaded and then sort of forgotten that they were there. And next thing you know, a couple of years have gone by and you look out there and there's 18,000 documents. That number may sound low if you've been utterly, if you've utterly abandoned your internet, that number may sound low. That number was high for us. And so we, ran a content inventory, divided the content out by topic for subject matter experts, and just ran a ruthless project to give people specific timeframes to go out and review the content and make a decision. Does it stay or does it go? And it wasn't so much a carrot as it was a stick, right? We are going to blow these documents away at the end of the time frame. Of course, we had requests for time extensions and that kind of thing, and we were reasonable people. We definitely, accommodated those timeline extensions to the greatest extent possible. At the end of that practice, we blew away 10,000 of the 18,000 pages overnight. And it was scary. I was not sure. I was not completely confident that we weren't getting ready to get into a situation where we were going to have to, tuck our tails and walk it back. In reality, what happened is, we had done enough looking and researching that I would say over the next 2 to 3 months after the 10,000 documents had been blown away, we maybe got a total of 100 requests or fewer than 100 requests for individual documents to be restored. That was well within the capability of my very small team to light those back up and to keep going. So I just want to, I share that story as a opportunity or a guiding light or an opportunity for inspiration that if you've been thinking that you want to just do a mass deletion of content, if you own that process, give yourself permission and just let yourself do it. Let's see here. Anything else on that? Anything else on the content inventory?
I think that covers what we're able to cover.
All right. Our next topic for today is intranet governance and content lifecycle management planning. And the big overarching thing here, I think, is it's never too early to start planning for governance. The one story I would share, though, is that it's so often the case that, I'm in a call or in a meeting with folks, going through and looking at content and trying to make tough decisions. And at some point, somebody in the call says, "Oh, that's a governance issue. We'll deal with it." And it's almost said flippantly. And I always wonder, does everybody in the room that heard you say governance agree on the definition of governance? So I always like to start with a definition of governance and what's the importance of it. And really it comes down to these two things: alignment and execution. You're really going for helping leaders across the organization, communication leaders and business leaders, align on, what are the roles and the best practices that everybody is going to be following. And that enables execution so that you are able to make stuff happen. The other thing that I like to point out here is that
I move your slides. So you.
Thank you.
You're dogging.
The other thing that I like to point out here is, that there's a few different decision types that have to be addressed. And it's important to level set with anybody when you are setting up your governance practice. Are you talking about strategic governance, the place where the big decisions are being made about the degree to which this intranet aligns with the corporate objectives and is taking the organization where we want to go, is taking employee culture where we want it to go? The operational governance, which is more translating those digital workplace objectives into something that can be implemented. It includes all the things like request management for new sets of content or new groups of people to be included, and prioritization for content and capabilities. And then the third type of governance decision making has more to do with the tactical governance. And this is that day-to-day decision making that's, boots on the ground, all those little decisions that are being made about, content at the page level. Who's going to own that content? Who's accountable for it? What support structures are in place to take care of those folks? So that's my little overview of governance. Thoughts on that, Alicia?
Yes, two thoughts. I will be brief because I know we have a little bit of Q&A we want to do and we're about out of time. Number one, to echo what I said before, intranet management is not a democracy. It is a benevolent dictatorship. So please feel free to assume that role until someone tells you otherwise. Don't be an order taker. Don't. I know it's easy to feel powerless, and try not to. And then the second part is that governance, a lot of governance, while it's about, processes and documentation and standards, it's also about people. Get to know your people, develop a relationship with your content owners. They will listen to you if they know you as a person and why you're doing what you're doing. So just like a lot of other things, it comes down to relationships. So don't forget that part.
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and pivot into questions. I think Amelia is going to come back and rejoin us.
I am. And we have a few questions throughout the chat. So hopefully with only a few minutes left, the one that I think is applicable to everyone and touches on the way we ended this session is from my girl, Tina. Not to play favorites. It was a great question. But going back to getting to know your people and being in the audience, sitting in the lunchroom with them. In today's day and age, is there a way to do that virtually?
Oh, that's such a great question. I think that you have to be much more intentional about it when it's virtual, because it has to involve, an outreach or a meeting maker, an opportunity for somebody to come and join you specifically. Alicia, do you have thoughts on that specifically?
I mean, it is difficult to do virtually. I think there are other mechanisms that you can put in place. Sometimes as simple as putting yourself out there as the owner of the internet and making yourself known to the rest of the company that you are a human being behind that screen. You know, the internet is not just some nameless, faceless entity part of the corporation. It's you, and you're back there. We would encourage our clients to do little profiles of your internet team, especially after a big rollout, and put your name and your email out there, and which would scare people. And I will tell you, just like Karen's example, it was not nearly as overwhelming as people thought. People would contact them with questions, feedback, whatever. But make yourself known when you have the chance, and people will come to you with their opinions, whether you want them or not. So
That's such a great point. That reminds me, like there's been, multiple implementations we've done where I've recommended that we put the content owner's name at the bottom of the page. And in fact, at H&R Block, we systematized that to the point that it was a requirement that every page was going to have an emailable entity listed at the bottom of it. So in some cases, if it's not super popular content, we had the ability to add just a single person's name. In other cases, we didn't want to, create individual human help desks, and so we would put more of a message group or a group mailbox or a call center number at the bottom. But yeah, that's another great way to get the feedback not only to you, but get it to the person that is closest to that content.
Thank you both. And with 1 minute left, I'm going off script of what I thought I was going to ask, because Stephanie, this is a wild question. What advice do you have if your communications director doesn't allow you to do research with field warehouse employees because she doesn't want to bother them? Never in my life heard that. I'm just dying to know the answer.
Ask her how bothered she is by them wasting their time day after day trying to find things. Sorry.
Yeah. So I actually have encountered this, and it can be a huge challenge. I think that the key is to find out like how much time can you have. So if you can't go sit in the lunchroom and talk to somebody during their break, that's pretty low bar, right? Is there any opportunity to ask a 3-question pulse survey on your intranet? Just publish it on the homepage and let people answer it. There are some really small gateway to entry, and if you can get even one little thing and start showing the data, so it's not just you saying it, you're able to demonstrate action that you're able to take on that feedback. That goes a long way toward breaking down some of those barriers. You're not alone, though. I have encountered that before with a couple of different clients, and it's just one of those things you have to work through.
I was being flippant, but in all seriousness, the message continually has to be, I'm trying to help us reach our goals, and give me a shot at it. And if you don't like the outcome, you don't think it was worth it, we won't do it anymore. Help me help everyone else. And let the answers speak for themselves.
I love that. And everyone else who asked questions, if they didn't get answered, Sydney did just drop Karen and Alicia's LinkedIn's below. So please connect.